Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Matthew, Adam, Neil, 10th Man, Arwin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey. Afternoon.
Excellent stuff. What a great intro. The enthusiasm level 100% less than it was before we started. But that's okay.
I tried.
We'll go through a few housekeeping questions. Hopefully that'll stir the enthusiasm level a little bit. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth?
It's over there.
No.
What?
There is none. We're still looking.
We looked in the pre-show about that. Someone mentioned the.
And we would have got away with it too if it wasn't for Flat Earth Debate. There's no evidence. You're gonna need a radius for do we have a radius? Have we measured a radius?
We don't even have a perpetuating globe, let alone self-perpetuating molten iron core in the middle of it.
Okay, well, what about any evidence of an elevation angle measurement acquisition from a curved baseline?
None.
That's an impossibility.
None. It's contradiction. An angle is two straight lines meeting at a vertices, right?
Yep.
Need that baseline.
You do, and the globe model itself, if you want to call the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator a model, that requires both a horizontal baseline labelled in their maths, check out Metabunk with its surface level, and eye level. Those are both horizontal. So the maths itself requires horizontal, be straight, not bent. Now, for the last 7 or 8 years, I've heard idiot numpties from the globe side of the anti-flat Earth discussion telling us that horizontal doesn't mean horizontal, it means bent. That level doesn't mean level, it means curved. And yet these fundamental principles are part of their maths. And not only are they part of their maths, that principle is exploited to give you the differential between eye level and surface level, to claim that the point you're seeing as the horizon is actually a mathematical derivation in their maths below surface level. When you watch yourself viewing something in Muppet vision, side of your own head, side of the target, side of a tangent point horizon, below the surface level that you're acquiring it from with a differential calculator, otherwise known as Earth curve maths. Well, there is no physical geometric sphere edge horizon. You wouldn't expect to see it even if you're a globe-believing Muppet. It doesn't exist and hasn't existed since 2020. It was debunked with the Black Swan. There's no longer any geometry to Earth to acquire because of refraction, according to them. Not that their refraction actually represents light bending through a sphere-shaped air. It doesn't. Nor does it represent actual refraction in the form of Snell's law with light traversing two different mediums. It isn't. What they have is a derivation of their R value when they beg the question, and then beg the question on top of the begging the question, and then beg the question on top of the begging the question to leave them with a paradox where they can't acquire the geometry, straight line, tangent, to Earth curve. They claim boats are being, forced to fall over in their mathematics? Yet they lay that claim at our door with pizza pie Earth and boats falling over it. Yeah, well, there is no physical geometric sphere edge horizon. There hasn't been since 2020. Therefore, there is no geometry to assert. There is no angle corrections to do. There's no dip geometry. There's no straight lines. The globe is so dead, it's untrue. You know, that is why we need to be censored. That's why we are here. That's why we're at the bottom of the lists of the graveyard shift of people producing crap on YouTube. We're not going to be found when you look for Flat Earth, because what we describe here is absolutely devastating. We not only explain how and why Earth is flat, how it's measured and navigated flat, but also how that flatness has been exploited to give you the globe belief that you're actually in, if you're coming here to debate. Not that you are, because you know you'll lose.
Nathan, good time to read some of those citations, like the one you read on the elevation angle in the pre-show.
Well, maybe we can have a bit of preamble for the live audience. So, AJ, I don't know if you want to read out the comment. I'll give you a bit of a preamble and I'll know not to interrupt it and stutter my way through it this time because it's quite lengthy. But if you can read the response you've got to this chap and maybe introduce him as well. This, for the audience's benefit, is a comment response to a person who has been asked a specific question. It's very direct. The question was, can you give me a citation for the acquisition of an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline? Now I'm paraphrasing, but that is in essence the question the person's been asked. Give me a citation for your bendy baseline. And this is the response he's got. So over to AJ. Hopefully he hasn't disappeared.
No, I'm here. So this is OG Qued, QED, from, this is a news site that's popped up, Flat Earth Civil Discourse on Facebook. And his response to my asking for a citation, he says, okay, here is my Australian example. Do not fuss the details or the exactness. Just go with my big picture. I live near Newcastle, New South Wales, about 1,100 to 1,200 kilometres from Rockhampton in Queensland. I've driven there. It's a bit further by road, of course, but that the Google Maps type distance and real life. I'm not sure what he's trying to explain there. On the December solstice last year, the sun was measurably at 10 degrees off my north of my local vertical. Sticks and shadows trigonometry at the same time. It was directly overhead near Rockhampton. Okay, on a globe plus distant stars model, this observation predicts that I am somewhere on a circle about 10 degrees of latitude away from the sun. That is directly overhead near Rockhampton at the same moment. Can you see why this is the case on a globe basis? You don't have to agree, but you can see why it is so. I am, so to say, rotated that far from the direct overhead view of the sun, so 10 degrees. So I am predicted to be 10 times 111 kilometres, 1,100 odd kilometres from that spot. Nowhere on a circle of that radius, which I have done the maths on 2 or 3 occasions and it works. I have no horizontal lines. No horizontal lines were used. No visual instruments were used. Does this clarify the current version of elevation angles or celestial navigation for you?
Answer, no. You asked for a citation. And you gave me that bloody word salad that included 10 degrees off horizontal for a measurement to a light in the sky. Yeah, you'll need a flat earth for that assertion of a degree measurement. No horizontals were used. What about the degree measurement you gave us? What was that you said in terms of latitude? A grid system that's been acquired by flat earth elevation angle measurements to Polaris? What do you mean there's no horizontals involved? What do you think that grid system is? You know, the same one Fight the Flat Earth scared of? That's a flat earth grid. Well, yes, you did need flat earth for all of your questions that weren't a citation for how you don't need a horizontal baseline when measuring an elevation angle. That wasn't a citation, you dumbo. What it was word salad. Yeah? Questions that used flat earth. That's what it was. Meanwhile, quote, the altitude angle, open brackets, sometimes referred to as the, quote, solar elevation angle, close brackets, describes how high the sun appears in the sky. The angle is measured between an imaginary line between the observer and the sun and the horizontal plane the observer is standing on, end quote, sustainable by design. altitude angle. That's a citation. You notice how it didn't come with a series of questions that included flat Earth proving elevation angles to a light in the sky or flat Earth proving latitude lines. It was just a description of how you measure an angle off a horizontal plane that you're standing on, with quotes around it. Yeah, Dumbo's on the globe side. You've got nothing. We're proving how your globe came from a flat Earth, because it did. What have you got? A load of word salad? That's your responses? Or maybe you can make the Toon attempt to, go up against a couple of flat earthers laughing at him because he's telling them how straight lines are used. Really? What about the refracted lines you've told us for 3 years? You are so buggered 6 ways from Sunday on the globe-believing anti-flat earth side. The rest of the people you think you're going to scramble your way back up to being, yeah, they're blissfully unaware of this going on because we're segregated away from them efficiently by YouTube with censorship. But you, the guys who are actually here, who think you're globe believers, you're not, you're anti-flat earthers. You're all screwed. This must be absolutely devastatingly painful for you all. And I know why. Because we are proving not only that Earth is flat, measured, navigated, obviously observably flat, but how that flatness was used to give you your globe. It's sad.
I was very confused how we went from celestial navigation at sea to driving a vehicle to a GPS and measuring sticks and shadows. That's very confusing to me.
Especially given you asked
Well,
him for a
fortunately-
citation on elevation angle measurements not needing flat baselines, which they do. That wasn't it.
Fortunately, today's video is on sticks and shadows.
So as with yesterday, I think this is the same videographer as one of the videos that we covered yesterday. On that note, I did actually find in amongst the arguing amongst the panel with John's acquisition of flatness, regardless of scale for the things around, that got edited out, let's just say, into a nice condensed 12-minute video that has been titled something to the effect of BBC proves Earth measured flat to lie about the globe. Something a bit more clickbaity. I can't remember exactly what I used, but something like that. BBC proves flat to lie about globe. That's members only at the moment. It'll come out over the weekend, so check that out. It did take a lot of work, and obviously an exceptionally gifted panel. So yeah, thank you guys. You can check that out as well when it comes out, unless you remember, and then check it out now. It's out now. But this is the same video. This is the same videographer that was cut up into that video that's now out for members. And as always, go and let this person know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. So the live stream chat has got a link to his video going by now, and I will formally introduce what we're going to be covering in a second. But for the meantime, while I'm formally introducing this person, because you will be coming back and actually listening to us pull apart this garbage, this wonderful videography, just let me know in the meantime at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Maybe leave a nice comment. Say we pulled apart your video, or we responded to your video, whatever it is you want to say. And hopefully he'll return the algorithmic love. Even though he's got a pretty small channel, it doesn't make any difference. Whoever, we would hope he would return the algorithmic love and put my link in his video, should he respond. Okay, whoever it was, go before we start.
It was just
wanted
me
to say
on
good
the
morning.
point.
Sorry, Adam. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Just on the point where you said, I trimmed the bit out with John. That's how we work here. It might have not been the greatest listening, but it's probably more back after show is what it's more like. That's how we beat through stuff. We'll argue with each other till we get to the truth. You heard it like yesterday again with Brian expressing his upward accelerating Earth. That's how we get there. We don't rest and just take people's word for it. And if we've got any doubt, any query, we raise it with each other and work through it.
Exactly.
And that moron that was presenting that yesterday went to that exact same point later on in the episode.
Which one? The moron that said that they used the grid to get the radius? That
No,
moron?
he didn't make the distinction between a baseline and the baseline.
What John's trying to say is, at the moment that it was ambiguous and we objected with the narrative intact, but the narrator didn't have it intact, John stepped up to say, your critique is incorrect because at this point with the narrator's ambiguity, he can do what he's actually said. That's not necessarily what Al-Biruni's going to be doing, but he's left it ambiguous enough for John to critique it and say, no, he can establish a flat section somewhere up in these mountains. He didn't say you can go from there and get the height, but he was pointing out that because of the ambiguity of the narrator, and I only know this because I edited it after the fact, John, so it wasn't like I was paying that close attention to be able to summarise this so consistently, but like I say, I just edited the video this morning. So, yeah, it's one of them. It is still worth, even if there is that ambiguity from a narrator that's being hyper-specifically pointed out to be strictly speaking true without the rest of the context around it, as John did, and have everyone else descend on him to say, no, in Al-Biruni's context, he does need sea level. That is the show. You're not wrong. At some point, someone was, I think it might have been John, you're like, well, what, debating this? Because I was moaning. And I was like, oh, after the fact, it's like, no, you were right. That is what we do here, and it is kind of what this show is all about. Doesn't matter if it's some fundy coming in or us amongst ourselves. That's what it's all about, isn't it? So no, it was very much appreciated. I don't want to give off the impression that I just don't want that to be the case. I do. That's the name of the show. You know what I mean? But there we go. But it wasn't for the purposes of education. It got edited out because it wasn't necessarily useful for the really excellent bits that were so concise as a result of that discussion that's had a fine point like by all the panel members. And I even commended you halfway through. I trimmed that out as well because it's hyperbole. You don't need me saying, these guys are ace, look at them, look at them go. You didn't need that either. But the fine end of the points I've kept in a 12-minute video because up until now I've never been able to get a lengthy discussion about Al-Biruni together where we can say, look, this is how they hijack a flat earth and turn it into a globe, with all of us discussing it and saying, this is how the narration's wrong, this is how the location geographically is wrong, here's how Al-Biruni's wrong, here's how it uses a flat earth. I mean, it was a really excellent, I mean, I say so myself, I've edited it, but, you know, it will be, if you see it on Saturday, an excellent video. You know, check it out. But that's why I glad it was a BBC video, because that's what I used as the clickbaity title. BBC proves measurements of flat earth used for Globeli, or whatever my clickbait title was.
Yeah, they like to confuse between a baseline so they can use a horizontal, and the baseline is everything will be measured from. They do that all the time.
Exactly. So that they can give you what is effectively again, kudos to John because he describes it on every other show, the differential calculation between eye level, that's a horizontal, yeah, the one that you draw out horizontally from your eye, and the baseline, the flat earth acquisition that you must use to reference everything else in terms of height. Well, those are two different parallel lines, and all the Earth curve calculator does is give you a differential between those two parallel lines, but assert that the point that's being measured at the horizon at surface level that you can actually see is a mathematical geometric horizon that you cannot see because it not only can't be seen because of refraction, forget that, it's below surface level in their maths. Very clearly drawn with a dotted line saying, here's the surface level. And here's the tangent point geometric horizon that can never be seen. Below it, below the surface, the level surface, the one needed to give you the geometry of the globe.
I've still got a real problem with ascertaining a baseline. You've got 2 points to take a measurement to the top of the mountain from. He's only got water running downhill. So he can take a measurement from point A, and he can get he can use a plumb line to generate his angle and relate that to a horizontal. But what he can't do is take the second angle and give the differential in height that he's taken off the water, which is running downhill. I don't think he's, without a standing body of water, which requires him to accept that a standing body of water is flat, I don't think he can ascertain a straight line of no change in altitude between points A and B. Take the measurements.
Oh, no, I don't think you can either.
No, I totally agree. I said it yesterday as well. I mean, but my problem was I dropped that point in just before you two got into the wrangled angle of whether or not any baseline could be established based on the ambiguity and hyperbole by the narrator. But as I say, yeah, when you're backing away from something and you're backing into a valley, I completely agree, Adam. You haven't got a common reference.
And that's why I say kudos that we have to argue like that amongst ourselves, because I wouldn't have considered developing that argument to go against John if it's not proposed, yeah. But in doing so, we demonstrate even further between us how ridiculous and impossible a task he's claiming. That's how we work, man. I like it.
Okay, hopefully we've
Because
chatted.
John is ace, bro.
Yeah, you're all ace. Before we blow smoke each other's ass, we are still live and we haven't even started this video at all. So we'll get into this. Hopefully everyone's been and let him know. Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me.
We will go over the first ever measurement of the circumference of the Earth. I've rated the physics level in this video as easiest. This experiment...
We've had the rating. I mean, I've got blocked ears, and when Brian said it yesterday, it sounded like the rating of the difficulty was idiot. That's how it sounds to me, because both of my ears are completely blocked up. Anyway,
yeah. No, I was going to comment. He's saying the measurement versus calculation.
There is no measurement here.
Was first done by a Greek named Eratosthenes, who was from the city of Cyrene, which I believe is pronounced something like Kyrene in Greek, and is located in present-day Libya, but at the time was part of Ptolemaic Egypt. So we call him Greek, but I guess he could just as well be called Egyptian or Libyan. I'll let you decide which nationality best suits him. Anyhow...
Any commentary so far? Seems reasonably historically accurate. I've got no objections. Anybody?
How did Eratosthenes measure the circumference of the Earth?
He didn't.
Well, he knew that in the city of Syene, which is the modern city of Aswan in Upper Egypt, on the summer solstice, the noontime sun was straight overhead.
But I've got a first question. Why does this have to be on the summer solstice precisely?
The summer solstice, in the sense, works just like the equinoxes when they're over the equator. That's the summer solstice, the furthest the sun goes, and it's directly overhead at that place where it's at. Each time the sun moves in its circuit, it's directly overhead somewhere. And so in the summer solstice, it's directly overhead the well.
No, I get that. I know what that means. I realise that the sun is going to be at the zenith, and I understand the claim. What I'm saying is, let's rephrase that. Is that to assert that this only works once a year? For the assertion?
The comparison, yes. That's why he has to go back the following year. And that's why that first place is chosen, because at that point it is GP for over the tropic. So at that point there will be no shadow because it is directly at the GP of the sun. So that's your base.
I see. So, I'm just trying to. I'm trying to relate to heliocentrism on a different level. So, in other words, for me to, maybe I want back in. Cipher. I want back in. Okay. So, what have I got to accept to get back in then? I've got to accept that on a certain day with the sun above you at a certain position. This is what I've got to accept, correct, Adam?
Yeah, but this is taken from reality. So it's not that the sun's going to have that position. That's fact. It's what the intonation of the angle change when you go to Alexandria or Cyan, whichever
You're
that
doing
angle
it again.
change.
You're doing it again. You're saying what I'm saying.
Get you back on the ball.
Yeah. You're just not saying it in the scary voice, and without the voodoo music and drums in the background. Now, if I put in some very deep timpani drums and say, "This is real. The sun will be overhead." You've got to do it in a more dramatic type of way so that people understand this voodoo. That at a certain time of year or at a certain place out in the desert, the sun will be above you at a certain time of day, and then a year later you can do the same thing. And this is just, I'm just saying, when you look at it from outside in, this is what we've got to accept, correct? This voodoo, over 100 people watching, woohoo.
Why, Nathan? Is it a problem that you should be able to only measure the physical circumference of this Earth only once a year?
Look, right, I'm just saying
Is that a problem?
I'm just saying that in a similar vein, I can describe that the only way to go through the portal to retrieve the Tesseract is when the sun is above the well at a certain time of year. Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Exactly.
Well, no, if you're wanting to use geometry, right, and the flat Earth to get your 90 degrees, which don't mention 90 if you're wanting to go back to the globe phase, you're going to have to measure that angle to get your right triangle, right?
That angle on that day at that time.
It doesn't matter what day. Just pick another object. This one happens to be a well.
Yeah,
The sun.
the
sun is
elder and
gonna be
wiser
dur-
of the panel aren't doing what me and Chocolate are doing. Now, this is not an age thing, but I am going to make it an age thing. In other words, when someone says this isn't a race thing, there's a good chance that they'll be calling the person who's black a nigger or something after that statement comes out of their mouth. So when I say this isn't an age thing, it very much is. But you're not picking up what me and Chocolate are putting down. We're drawing attention to it was a time of war. It was a time of suffering. On the noon of the third day in the desert of Siberia. Just that's what me and Chocolate are going with. You're going, no. If you pick a different celestial item and do the geometry, that's not where we're going with this. You're just not picking it up.
I picked it up. I thought you were done. I'm changing it to what I want to say.
Yeah, you cracker.
You
Well,
want to make
gotta
it
throw in there,
serious.
Don't mention 90.
Exactly. Don't mention 90. Well, you just did, John. So we should really get this back on a serious vein. I mean, it is fun being a flat earther when you ignore all the ridicule, but there is actually a lot of globe believers out there, and we really should do a proper job of this. I'm sorry. And so should Chocolate be. I actually blame him.
Oh, so don't,
I
don't
blame
blame the
myself, too.
redneck.
Sorry. People who actually want to keep on topic, that's me and Chocolate. We will now keep our mouths shut, I promise.
Right, it was a time, when shadows and angles of shadows, and the bigger the angle of the shadow, the more the Earth curved.
Rule the Earth.
Okay. We're having fun here. Please share the show.
Meaning that if you put a stick in the ground vertically, it would cast no shadow. However, back in Alexandria, where he lived, on the same day the noontime sun was not straight overhead, and so a vertical stick in the ground would cast a shadow.
He has kind of missed out the whole 1 year later thing, hasn't he? Oh well.
Let's draw a little cartoon to make sure we all understand what we're talking about here.
Yay, cartoons!
It's everything you wish for.
The same thing. Yay!
No.
Yay!
This is where
I'm excited,
no,
Neil,
this
too.
is where it gets good. This is where it gets good.
If this is the ground, and we have a vertical stick, at noon on the summer solstice, the sun is straight overhead, and so its rays are parallel to the stick, and so no shadow is cast. In Alexandria, on
Why is it with this guy? Right, okay. Okay, if you're going to say, no, look, I appreciate that the sun looks like it's only 3 foot off the ground, but there's no scale in this diagram. Okay, I accept that the sun isn't really 3 foot off the ground. There's no scale, even if you're a heliocentric believer. I'll give it you. Okay. Why isn't the ground curving? Is it because he's describing something being vertical? Perpendicular?
Is he
to
showing a
horizontal?
flat ground?
Yep. That's why I said it's going to get
That's
good.
terrible.
Hello? Yeah, we like you proving a flat earth, but it's also irritating. You know what I mean? We want to commend you, but ultimately you're our enemy. So it's hard. So we can only laugh.
on the same day at noon, the sun is not straight overhead, and so its rays come in at some funny angle, which we're going to call theta.
Well, proving a flat earth. Well done. What is it, man? It used to be in 2016, this sort of thing would make me scratch my head and shit my pants. Excuse my language, but I'm being serious. And I'm sure there's plenty of flat earthers out there also that would be baffled by this and go, what the hell? Whereas we're here arguing amongst ourselves about the finite details of some of the disseminations and ambiguities of the hosts who give these sort of videography, and just pointing out every step of the way, this guy's proving a flat earth. You realise that, right? These angles need a flat earth.
And as a result, a shadow is cast on the ground. Eratosthenes says, look, if the earth is round and the sun's rays are coming in from this direction,
then you wouldn't get any shadows. that give you an angle? Because you're taking it off a curved line now. That's not an angle. Okay.
At noon on the summer solstice.
I have a problem with if the Earth is round.
Well, that's what.
If you don't know if the Earth is round or not, how do you know you're calculating a circumference
I'm glad you're here,
or a
Chocolate.
radius?
I'm glad you're here.
Presuppose it.
We're all just too close to the tip of the spear, it seems. Yeah, not that I'm saying chocolate's become dull or anything, but yeah, we shouldn't forget the fact that you don't beg the question. You don't just automatically assume that, well, if the Earth is a sphere, it's because we're going through an Eratosthenes example, right? But yeah, why not go back to grassroots? No, you don't beg the what? What do you mean if the Earth's a sphere? If the Earth's a banana, why would you make such an assumption?
Exactly.
Why not?
You've got to beg
this
the
is
question.
after-
Right.
This is after he shows a drawing of a flat baseline and the sun at an angle to it, which actually is the reason why the shadows cast. But he's later going to say it's because the Earth is curving.
Shout out to BG, who says, I don't always super chat, but when I do, it's the best place to date to keep up with the flat Earth debate. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your support, BG. Thank you for the super chat. And over 110 people watching. Please share the show. A massive thank you to all of you. There's only 115 odd people watching because mostly regulars who come and watch the show all the time share the show regularly. But if you've just got here because probably you clicked on a link that someone shared to you, please do the same. Click on the share button. It's not going to bite you.
It must be the case that Sieni is located right here, at the closest point to the sun, such that the stick points straight out in the same direction as the sun's rays. Alexandria is further north, so the stick points off in a different direction, and so the sun's rays come in at an angle theta.
That's not an angle. You've got the line meeting a curve now. Yeah, fundamentally different to an angle.
Relative to the stick. And so we have a shadow.
He did say relative to the stick. Okay. So you've got a curved baseline between these two things. That doesn't work.
Maybe
He then
maybe he doesn't understand logic. Maybe the problem is that he doesn't understand how a suppositional statement's supposed to work. And if your if statement contradicts your measurements, don't even continue.
notices that because the sticks are perpendicular to the ground, they're simply extensions of radii.
Oh, where I said he was wrong? No. He's going to suggest that if I assume Earth's a sphere, and if I assume my premise is incorrect, but for the fact that they move to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. So no, John, no, he's got around that by just saying, if I beg the question and it fails, then I beg the question that the light moves to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth by angle because it's perpendicular to R, as opposed to perpendicular to the flat baseline I drew initially, then it all works. Obviously, it means we've got to go to the centre of Earth that we're not doing, and we're not standing on a presupposed spherical Earth to begin with. But other than that, this now works.
And the angle between the two radii.
Sorry, I missed that. I played through. Say again, Adam.
He seems to have missed a few of his assumptions out, and so the first assumption Eratosthenes is going to make is he doesn't know what he's on and where he's at. But what he's going to try and do is assume that the sun emits parallel rays and he's big and far away, and that's why on a sphere he's going to get these shapes. Or it could be that the sun is close, local, and smaller on a flat plane, and he's not sure. So he's going to do this. And
as was detailed himself.
Yeah.
Sorry, Adam. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're right, Bob. So that's really what he's detailing. He's still working in assumption land to try and demonstrate that it is. But he's working on the assumption that if all of these things are correct, that the sun is big and far away, and therefore light rays are parallel, which they're not, then he can put it on an Earth and interpret the shadow angle as just been described.
And you know who backs you up on that? Mr. High Priest himself, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who says whatever Eratosthenes did could work on a flat plane as well.
is just the change in latitude between the two cities. Having studied his geometry, he realizes that since the sun's rays are parallel to the radius going to Sieni,
I realize, maybe you could define realize as opposed to assume. Now, we could get into debunking this assumption in terms of Adam's very concise description he gave 30 seconds ago. But do we need to cover the bad moon shadow here? Has anybody got this down pat to the point where they can summarize it in 30 seconds?
I'm ready, but we're not ready to mention it yet.
Okay.
and the
But I
stick is
will,
parallel.
before we move on, I would like to say that if you're going to assert the rays are parallel, how did you measure the angle of the rays to assert their parallel?
Exactly. Like I said, that's another massive assumption in his hypothesizing, because this is a differentiator. They could be diverging and it'd be a close, smaller local sun that's having this effect. So that's what he can't tell. So he's going to use and assume that the sun rays are parallel to then just calculate his radius.
What
Yeah,
do you
but
mean-
still, he'll need a flat plane either way to measure the angles to assert their parallel.
Correct.
No,
Still madness.
no, not in this method. Because as he said, it's in relation to the stick. Look at the diagram. That this you're creating a tangent plane here, which is fine for what he's claiming in terms of the geometry, because it's an extension of the R value. So it's okay to generate that first angle theta, and then, like I say, but it's not applicable to the surface he's standing on. It's only applicable to the tangent plane that's created by the stick, perpendicular to the stick, to the R. So you can take that angle, and it's that angle he's going to use and measure to then define the curvature that's being assumed is the cause for the angle change.
That's a
So
paradox.
if we assume, yeah,
Go on, John. You got there first. I'm going off what you said because I figured it out after you said it. Go ahead. Before I steal your glory.
so we're going to take the angle we had to measure off a flat plane and move it to the center to establish the lines as parallel.
Yeah, tangent plane. We all good?
As soon as we've got the angles,
The center of the thing, you're still trying to figure out the
Yeah.
distance of it.
Yeah, before you figured
What?
it out, Chocolate. Yeah, Chocolate's got there. Before you figured out, you've got a radius to the center of it, parallel light running to the stick, and a tangent plane to give you a vertical stick tangential to a plane that runs on the top of a dingleberry Earth with a line to R. Yeah, that's what you've got to assume. You've not figured it out yet, but you've got all those things in place to make this assertion. Yes.
if you can then assume that, then you can take the angle theta, translate it to the center of the Earth, use that theta angle and express that by the known distance between Alexandria and Cyan, so you can work out, say it's 10 degrees, then you know 360 divided by 10, you can express that as a percentage of a circumference of the known distance that you've got between Alexandria and Cyan, and that will therefore allow you to generate a circumferential value, which you can then divide by 2 pi to give you your R value.
Correct. So
Right.
what's physically happening, though, in terms of where both of the gentlemen on the panel are correct, is there's a transposition in terms of what Adam described as the, I can't remember how you phrased this, but you'll tell me in a second. What you've got is the assumption of a tangent plane, which is what you're getting the angle off. But that is the angle measured to the item. Yeah. So with the stick and the shadow, it's the generation of the angle based on the position with respect to the sun, giving you that shadow. Well, that is a flat measurement off a flat plane in physical reality, regardless of your assumptions. Now, that angle is you holding a protractor and the degrees that you can move the arm through the protractor. That's the angle measurement. Now, the bait and switch comes where that angle measurement off the surface, which requires a flat plane, which is where John is absolutely correct, refracted curvature is absolutely correct. They then change that to an angle measurement that you could literally hold a protractor or an astrolabe and take, to it being The circle that we see here described as Earth being a protractor itself. So instead of that degree measurement being the degree that you take off the surface, a tangent plane in this diagram, it's now Earth, as labelled, as a protractor. So it's the degree from the centre out. That's where they make the bait and switch, with all of the assumptions that must be in place for them to do it. But all of those assumptions are just subterfuge for the fact that they've moved a physical angle measurement from the surface to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth they haven't got a measurement for yet. That's what's actually taking place. So it's moving the angle that you physically can take with your hand and your eye and putting it at the centre of Earth to make Earth the protractor. Anybody else got any comments on this? If not, I'll carry on playing.
Is it
Parallel to the
logical to try to figure out the circumference or the radial value of a flat plane?
No, they're taking a measurement off a flat plane and then moving the angle off the flat plane to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to figure out the circumference of the flat plane they measured.
Yes, exactly. Where your paradox started, and I spotted it when you... Exactly. It's a paradox. We're trying to figure out the circumference of this flat surface we're measuring. Or this flat surface we're getting an angle from. What's the circumference of this flat surface we're taking this angle from? That's the question they're asking. Well, we're taking the circumference of this flat baseline we've got an angle from. If the light comes in parallel from a distant sun to a presupposed spherical Earth, and we transpose that angle we took with our hand and eye down to the centre of said presupposed spherical Earth, then the angle is actually the angle of an Earth if it's a protractor. That's what they're saying.
I've got a picture of it for you to show the audience in Master D.
But that was my whole problem with the if the Earth is a sphere, then he's measuring circumference. Who told him that it was a sphere that he was measuring in the first place? And if nobody told him that, how does him taking measurements off a flat plane assume that or assert that that's a sphere that he's measuring? This is batshit crazy.
Because the narrative is he assumed it was a sphere in the beginning.
Ancient Greeks, man, ancient Greeks.
They didn't. They used the equatorial plane, and the description, what we call a globe burger, is the flat plane with, in this instance, north-centric. And then you've got a dome of the heavens around this, what's on screen now that 10th Man's just posted. But the surface isn't the surface that's drawn like it's a map with North and South America mostly showing, with a flat plane cutting through the middle of it. The flat plane is the bit that the measurements are actually taking place on and reference to. And then the line that's going to be drawn out draws out through the ground you're no longer claiming to be standing on, out to the celestial sphere or celestial hemisphere. Well, it's got nothing to do with the globe Earth surface at that point. It's redundant. It's not even redundant. It's surplus to requirements. All right, let's continue.
Would you like something else that I could send you that really? Hold on one second.
If you like, I'll carry on with this.
Radius going to Alexandria, then the change in latitude must be equal to...
The change in what now? My God, we don't get far into these videos before they start proving a flat Earth, do we?
Yeah, this is
The change in the grid they didn't have yet.
I doubt very much that they got long bits of chain and rope and went the 500 miles. So if you postulate how they're going to calculate the distance between the two cities, then the most logical way would to be take flat Earth angles to Polaris and calculate the difference. That would be the sensible way. So once again, the distance we're using is a flat baseline.
I've just looked it up.
Distance.
Apparently he was using raylons, and raylons is a globe Earth term distance, and we don't actually know the scale of raylons to miles, but if I estimate that it's roughly converted to a globe, then it all works out.
He actually demonstrates later what he thinks happened, but if you go to the next slide, Nate.
Just to reiterate that point, just as yesterday we said with Al-Biruni that he gets his height of his mountain off a flat plane, which he can't generate. Yeah, he's using a flat base. This is what I'm saying here again. So instead of just the 100, 200 meters that he's taking the different angles with Al-Biruni, this is now a 500-mile distance between the two things. And the only way to ascertain that is to use celestial navigation with a flat baseline and judge the differences of the angles, elevation angles from Polaris. That's how you define the distance between Ceylon and Alexandria. It's off of a flat plane, unless you measure it and account for R, which you'd have to do, which is what you're trying to find out. So you couldn't measure it that way. So you have to take a straight line distance.
Okay, I've got your highlighted quote on screen 10th.
Yeah, this goes with the picture before you showed. It may be a bit confusing for beginners to imagine the celestial equator and the related declination. A really simple way to picture this is to replace the sphere of the Earth with a flat circular platform on which the telescope stands. This is how Right Ascension and equatorial mount telescope works. 4 axes, right? And it says, well, you got to imagine a circular platform on which the telescope stands, but I'm supposed to be doing it from a curve of the Earth. No, I got to imagine that the Earth is flat.
Wow. Where is that from?
I'll post it. It's really good. It's all about the equatorial mount telescope and how it works. It destroys them.
Yeah, it's
There's
built
an
on
extra
horizontal.
tidbit in there because it's like, they have the flat plane, but that wasn't enough. They also said it was round. What's up, guys?
Yo, what up,
What's up,
Eli?
Eli?
To the angle theta that the sun's rays make with the stick. He then says if we know the distance from Sieni to Alexandria, which we're going to call S here, that's just an arc length on a circle, and it must be equal to the radius times the angle theta. This is just by definition of an angle.
Well, the distance that they give, even if it's asserted to be a sphere, Brian covered this a couple of days ago, would be a chord length distance. So,
They say definition of an angle.
yeah.
Yes, he did.
long as you
Wonder if
measure-
he'll define angle for us.
In radians, not degrees. The circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, and so we can replace r by the circumference divided by 2 pi, and then solve for the circumference to find that it must be equal to 2 pi s divided by theta. Now all we have to do is measure theta and s.
If you're enjoying this video so far, please like and subscribe.
Before he plugs his own video, I mean, we are sharing the algorithmic love today. Go and let him know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Hopefully he'll make a response. There's a live link going by in the live stream chat now. So hopefully with 125 people watching. Wow. Please share the show. Massive thank you to all of you who smashed the share button already. That's why there's 125 people watching. But yeah, let this dude know. Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. We responded to your video. And should he make a response, hopefully he'd do the same for me. Anyway, there's a link. It's going by in the live chat.
And consider sharing it with a few friends.
There's a few assumptions that have been made here, so let's
All right, let's see your disclaimers.
go over them.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're way ahead of you, buddy.
The first assumption is that the Earth is a sphere.
Wow. Never gets old. Knew that was coming.
At least you're honest. It's okay. It doesn't matter. This assumption is a logical fallacy. So off its face, Chocolate called it. Yeah, let's not forget. This is just a begging the question fallacy, right, Chocolate?
Yes, indeed. Play that again for us so we can all hear it nice and loudly.
And subscribe, and consider sharing it with a few friends.
There's a few assumptions that have been made here, so let's go over them. The first assumption is that the Earth is a sphere. In reality, this business of the sun's rays coming in at one angle in one place and a different angle in another place doesn't actually imply the Earth is a sphere, it just means it's not flat. The second
Whoa.
That's a non sequitur and baseless assertion because the angle requires it be flat. So why did you drop that in?
It's
Go on,
also
Adam.
against the logic of the premise of Eratosthenes. So his assumptions are that it could be round Earth, yeah, with a sun that is big and far away emitting parallel sun rays. Or it could be a flat Earth with a sun that is local and close with divergent rays. That's the two explanations for the shadows. You can't tell any of the measurements he does, which it is. But what you can do is show the calculations for it being a ball Earth and the sun big and far away. But the assumptions has to also include that it could be a local, close, small sun to create exactly the same shadow. Eratosthenes does not deny that.
But he does use a flat Earth angle to do it, and to make apologetics for that flat Earth angle, he can describe it as a tangent plane based on the assumption, begging the question fallacy, that he's put in his assumptions at point 1. In other words, he still needs a flat Earth methodology.
Yes, and that's what I was referring to where he's created that segment. That can only be generated by flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris or measured. And if it's measured, then it may be a curve. I mean, you've got topography, so we couldn't measure it. It's got to be calculated through celestial navigation, which by definition is done on a flat baseline between town A, town B, and Polaris's GPs. That's a straight, flat baseline between all of them. So it's not a chord, a segment length at all. It is a straight line. It can only be applied as a straight line if you're going to put it in there. But it's getting convoluted then because you're
It is,
allowing
but
it.
still, shout out to Brian. Tip of the spear, things get very complex very quickly because of the layers of bullshit. But yeah, it's worth dropping that in. It would have to be a chord line to give you a straight line distance as asserted. Well, no, we're not tunneling through Earth, and shout out to Brian for labouring that point.
An assumption is that
Well,
Sieni
Go on.
1 second, Nathan. I just want to say that the only way to measure that arc length that they're claiming on a globe is for one of them to be at the center of that globe.
Yeah.
If they can't do that, then they can't measure it on a globe. It's that simple.
Yeah, we're not standing at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth for these angles to work as Earth being the protractor that you rotate. Earth isn't a protractor we rotate about ourselves at the centre of it. It's absolutely absurd. And to assert it at the point that you're trying to figure out what Earth is, as being claimed here, is even more absurd because it's blatantly begging the question. It's a logical fallacy. And then to use a flat Earth methodology to do it, and then conclude that the flat Earth methodology led to the bendy surface that you needed to get the angle. It's absurd on so many levels.
lies on the Tropic of Cancer. This is because we're saying that on the summer solstice, the noontime sun is straight overhead in Sieni, which is in fact how the Tropic of Cancer is defined. That is, the Tropic of Cancer is the latitude at which the noontime sun is straight overhead on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere.
Hemisphere? Latitude lines? Go on, Adam, you got there first.
I'm not even questioning that. It's not an assumption, that's a fact. Cyan does have a GP, which is directly below the path of the sun on that date once a year when it's at its highest point.
Yeah, but the two problems are...
So it's not an assumption.
No,
you get me?
The two assumptions, there's two assumptions that are contradictory. The first was that it's going to appear somewhere on a flat Earth measured grid system in respect to latitude. The second is that it's in respect to hemispherical positioning. Well, those two statements are contradictory with one another. So he's got two assumptions. One proves a flat Earth, because that's how the grid system's used. The other assumes a sphericity that precludes an angle measurement. So, unless you assume a tangent plane, notwithstanding your pointing it out earlier. So, these two things are a contradiction of one another, Adam. I don't know what you've got to say about that. It's not necessarily directed to you, just last person talking.
He's got it on the grid system. And on the grid system, you've still got the tropics. Yeah. It's when you take a ball and draw circles on the ball and call them the tropics that he's substituting. The point I'm making is this is not an assumption that CN has a GP once a year that doesn't allow for a shadow because it's directly under the path of the sun. That's just a fact, irrespective of whether you think you're on a ball or not. It's a fact of celestial navigation.
No, sure. We established that earlier. It's part of the trailer. It was a time of war.
So it's not an assumption. So I don't know why he's saying I'm assuming it's on the Tropic of Cancer. I don't know. see why that is.
Now I see what you mean. Now put it back up on screen. This is under assumptions. I see.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Gotcha.
Let's see if he gets to some more assumptions,
Okay.
actual ones.
The third
And it's
assumption
just
he
the
makes
habit
is
of
that
making it.
Sieni is due south of Alexandria. This needs to be true because if the cities lie east-west of one another, that doesn't have any effect on the angle at which the sun's rays come in.
Right. Well, that's not true.
But
If you go back
this
to the
is
map,
nonsense.
you'll see they're not on the same latitude lines.
Okay, so it's just ignorance on the part of the narrator. I don't know how long we want to dwell on this. We're not ballers.
He's-
So, yeah,
If he says Sieni one more time, I'm going to take a contract out on him.
Cyan. Oh, somebody's at my
You
door.
gotta give him
Guys,
props,
sorry,
though,
I've got
because-
my wife snipped out and someone at my door. I have to answer it. Please, can you pick up the slack just for 2 seconds?
I was just gonna say you kind of have to give them props though, because most of these numpties that we listen to, we gotta listen for the disclaimers they make and point them out. This guy's like at the end of all this crap, he's like, "Well, so check out all the assumptions that I had to make and all this nonsense I just told you guys." It's like, all right, thanks, buddy. And then the first one out the gate, oh, we gotta assume the Earth is a sphere. Thanks.
What he just said there a minute ago about how they need to be on the same longitude line to for the sun's rays to come in, like for the angle of the sun's rays. How would he know about that? Like the whole point of this is, Chocolate, you were just saying again earlier, how would he know about this longitude line? Supposedly, this was the first measurement. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly my point.
You know what I mean? So that's complete nonsense. You know, and angles of the sun's rays, they don't know what angle, like according to them, they hadn't even determined what angle the sun's rays were coming in at that point.
It's
Yeah,
like
okay.
they're trying to use the grid they don't have to figure out the radius that they need for the grid that they don't have to figure out the radius.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
never wrong.
18 minutes difference.
Only the north-south direction is important for this. So let's see how good these assumptions are. Well, the first one, the Earth is a sphere, that's a pretty good assumption.
Because
Where's all the other assumptions? He's only got what the hell?
whoever's not on mute up. Go ahead, QE. What's your objection?
That's Elijah.
Oh, my bad.
Jeez.
Bloody hellfire. Go ahead, QE.
I'm just saying that is he done with the assumptions? What is going on here?
He didn't recognise any of the flat Earth assumptions that were required in terms of his geometric and angle measurement assertions in his methodology, but he did recognise that he begged the question of a sphere Earth and then assumed two things that weren't actually assumptions and were incorrect in one instance. The rest of them, the flat Earth things that he had to assume because they were prerequisite to make the angle measurements, he just didn't acknowledge any of them.
Now, what about the parallel rays of the sun and the sun being close and how they use some hard pipe-hitting surveyors to get the distance between the two places? Those types of things.
Sorry, hold on. I
Yeah.
actually, by chance, he's just sent me an email. He says, quote, all pretty good assumptions, end quote. There you go.
No, listen, it's
John.
coming up, John. It's coming up. But just replay the last part about the Earth being spherical is a pretty good assumption. That's all he says.
Only
There's
the
no proof
north-south
for it.
direction is important for this. So let's see how good these assumptions are. Well, the first one, the Earth is a sphere, that's a pretty good assumption. Technically not exactly a sphere, but it's pretty close. How about the second assumption?
Hang on.
So it's a good assumption because it's pretty damn spherical, by assumption.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to jump on earlier. How is that a good assumption? I don't see where the logic came from to make that a good assumption.
You're fighting against the fallacy and saying, I don't see how this fallacy is good logic. No, you're right, Brian.
So he's assuming the very thing he's attempting to prove. He needs to look up logical fallacies. Wonder what that will point him to.
Begging the question.
Does Sieni lie on the Tropic of Cancer?
Diane. There you go. I did it for you.
Almost. The Tropic of Cancer, turns out, is right about here, a little bit south of Sieni. But it's pretty close.
That's
Is
it.
Sieni due
Contract's out.
south of Alexandria?
Sieni.
Not quite. It's a little bit east. And since we only care about the north-south distance between the two cities, this means that if you measure the distance between Alexandria and Sieni, it's going to be a little too long, and you're going to overestimate the size of the Earth. Luckily, though, the error in the placement of the Tropic of Cancer actually results in an underestimate of the size of the Earth, and so these two errors tend to cancel one another out rather than add up.
You see? So good.
On underestimate. What does he? Could you put that back on, Nathan? What the hell is he talking about?
The error in the placement of the Tropic of Cancer actually results in an underestimate of the size of the Earth, and so these two errors tend to cancel one another out rather than add up.
You know, what's interesting about that is they always have two different hypotheticals that cancel each other out, that equate to you not having the effect of the claim that they made.
Either that or it's just negligible.
No, this is different. This is a margin of error cancelling itself out, as opposed to a contradictory, completely nonsensical statement versus a non-reality that you don't observe cancelling each other out, therefore making it true. This is different.
Well,
How do you
when
actually
they-
measure
when they- Go ahead. It's not important. Go ahead.
Sieni and Alexandria? Well, it turns out that at the time, the Ptolemaic government was in the habit of measuring distances from various places for land surveying purposes. And so there was an
They'd need a flat Earth for that too.
And hard pipe hitting surveyors.
Yes, sir.
As it turns out, they were really interested in surveying. Come on.
profession
no
of people who went
evidence
around
that-
measuring the distances from one place to another by counting their steps. So either this distance
Look, it's perfectly legit, okay? Don't laugh. It's not unreasonable to count out distances in steps when you're calculating circumference values for Earth that's a
I
sphere.
mean, that doesn't sound too archaic or nothing.
Does it have the tag? Nah, it's not. It's not got anything about flat Earth under this.
had already been measured by the government, so it was known, or Eratosthenes simply paid one of these guys to measure this distance. But there's another problem here. What we want for this experiment is the distance
Stay with me.
Not an experiment.
as the crow flies,
just
not
got-
on land.
Nathan, he's listed his assumptions. I mean, number one, right, is his surveying assumption that Abdul could count 15 million fairy steps and it translate to any kind of real straight line distance across the surface. That is the hugest assumption that we've had so far, that the numbers he's going to put in have any relevance, have any validity to either a circumferential value or even a straight line distance.
So really, this should have a strap line underneath it saying words to the effect of, the globe Earth is an archaic idea using flat Earth elevation angle measurements to delude the public into this archaic notion with archaic measurements that aren't really measurements and labelled as experiments incorrectly. It should have that sort of disclaimer underneath it.
Yeah, it's on a proper tramp stamp for the ball.
Archaic.
So if you have hills and valleys that you either have to walk around or over, this is adding to the distance. Thankfully, Egypt is a pretty flat country, and especially if you're walking.
It's a what?
What?
It's a what country?
It's a what?
So if you have hills and valleys that you either have to walk around or over, this is adding to the distance. Thankfully, Egypt is a pretty flat country, and especially if you're walking near the Nile, as the Saharan image of giant sand dunes doesn't start till further west closer to Libya.
Gotcha. So fortunately, Earth's nice and flat to give you the nice straight flat distances for the. Yeah. Are these
For your
people
pace
just?
count.
These people just like
And if you use
sent to
you
snatch
use
your
a
own wig
river-
off school. I'll get there. Are they sent you snatch your own wig off school or what?
Yeah, because he
Yes.
cited the only 6-inch drop of the Nile across its length. So it's one of the flattest areas, isn't it, with a really low relief on the river. I'm sure it's like 6 inches.
How
across the
many
flat
pretty
plane.
flat countries do you need to make a sphere?
A lot. All of them.
What's the distance that we're talking about here? 500 miles, somewhere in that vicinity?
Yep.
In the military, we used to do pace counts, right? We'd do them on a number of different, 100-meter pace count. That's only 100 meters, right? And we'd do them over uneven terrain, some flat terrain, others uneven, and you'd average it out. At 500 meters, we were 10 to 20% off every single time. 500 meters. We always had to take that into account.
Wait, was it always plus 20%?
No.
Oh, plus or
always,
minus.
no.
Oh, okay.
So
If
you're
you
saying at
walk across the-
500 miles, you would be
Yeah.
just a bit outside.
Just a bit outside, yes.
Even if you're walking across alongside a pretty flat river.
Yes.
500 miles, 600 miles. It's all the same.
But then again, if you're walking along the Nile, even though it runs pretty much south to north, it still is a river and winds around a bit. And so you're going to measure a distance that's a little too long. But if there's a place where the distance on land is pretty close to the distance as the crow flies, Egypt would be that place.
Not if it was a sphere. What an idiot.
Yeah, he's a
So
clown.
Yep.
Eratosthenes carries out this experiment and measures
Say it with me.
An experiment.
the angle theta to be 1/50th of a circle, and the distance s between the two cities to be 5,000 stadia. A stadion was the standard unit of measurement at the time.
Sorry, did you not just tell us it was done in footsteps? Am I missing something? Did they have the stadia sticks with them when they were doing it in footsteps?
And it is apparently equivalent to 157.5 meters.
Because so as substantiated by No, he's going to do that next. Watch.
But this conversion is debated among historians, and it could be anywhere between 157 to 209 meters.
Sorry, just mock your own shitty evidence, I would.
Nevertheless,
I had a little bit of geekiness there. The stadia are known because it's a celestial navigation derived unit.
using these
It
values,
equates to
Eratosthenes
It equates to 1/10 of a nautical mile.
Oh, what's a nautical mile?
It's a flat Earth measurement, distance derived from elevation angles to Polaris off a flat baseline.
I see. So 1 degree as it drops towards the horizon would be representative of what, sort of 60 nautical miles. And what did you say it was for stadia?
It's 1/10 of a nautical mile.
I see.
So it's a flat Earth unit.
So 1/10 of 60 nautical miles, correct?
1 nautical mile, yeah. So it's a very small, yeah. So there's 60 nautical miles per degree, isn't there? And 1/10 of one of those nautical miles is equal to a stadia.
You sure about that?
Yeah. So it's no
we
different
just
there.
say yeah for once. Just give him it. Does it really matter? I mean,
It
let's
could
be
also
honest.
also be described as 1/10 of a minute of latitude.
There you go.
I thought a stadia was from your. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm mixing it up with another term. From your elbow to your index finger.
A foot.
That'd be a cubit.
Not a cubit. Like I said, I may be confusing it.
Okie
Carry
dokie.
on.
I'm glad we did this. Historically fun and all that.
finds the circumference of the
But
Earth
the
to be
point-
250.
Oh no, we're not done.
No,
Go ahead.
The point wasn't to argue it, it was to prove it's a flat Earth distance. It's derived via celestial navigation, knowing that the baseline is flat. That's its point. The units he's stating are flat Earth units.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank God.
50,000 stadia, which is a little over 39,000 kilometers, using the 157.5 meters per stadia conversion. Modern measurements of the Earth's circumference, if you go around the poles, is a little over 40,000 kilometers.
Let's see those then. Obviously, he's going to show us that measurement to contrast it now, isn't he? It's only reasonable, and that's obviously what we're going to expect to happen next.
So using this method, he was only
going
off
to get that, are we?
Well,
We're gonna
no,
get the-
you speak too soon.
by about 1.6%. By the way, if you use the 209 meters per stadium instead, then he's off by about 30%.
This is where he'll give us the actual measurement to make sure we can verify that the vastly, wildly varying distances and stadia and footsteps and flat versus straight lines and rivers and over flat terrain, all of these wildly different measurements come within a surprisingly, a surprisingly accurate and exact 1.6% difference. It shocks me that given the variation of the original measurement, not only that, obviously we're going to see that new measurement to compare it, but how you can give it as a single number. How is something so widely varied only 1.6% different? That seems stupid.
He did say up to 30, but what was Al-Biruni out? Was he 3?
Within 5%.
5. So in 1,000 years of advancement, they managed to increase their error rate by 3-fold.
So, food for thought.
What? Food for thought? Where's the measurement to compare it to?
A similar experiment was...
What? Well, excuse me? No. I put my neck out for you, my friend. I said that obviously you wouldn't just throw out a baseless assertion that it was in 1.6 of a measurement that you didn't show. Where's the measurement? This crap that's widely varied and archaic and pretty loose, they're being pretty fast and loose. If I tell someone I'm going to make them a house and then I go, oh, it's about this many footsteps, they're going to be pretty pissed with me, yeah? But yet we're supposed to take this as read based on it being within 1.6 of an actual measurement. Where's that? Oh, is it just this and a baseless assertion? All right. Well, I wish I hadn't stuck my neck out for you, assuming that you would give us that actual measurement. Yeah, there isn't one.
Can I just add something in there? Kind of.
I'm going to go in no.
As well, I suppose.
I'm thinking no.
I'm thinking no.
Yeah,
also.
well, you're going to have to hear it.
Can we just finish the video?
Arwen's thinking no too. Go ahead, Brian. Everyone else, shut up. Go ahead, Brian.
Today. Thanks, Nathan. If they're going to be doing that today, right, they're going to pre-assume that they have an oblate spheroid. Now, the oblateness of their sphere, right, comes from the pre-assumption that they're rotating, so centrifugal force will cause the sphere to become oblate. But the geometry is spherical, not oblate. Right? The oblate the oblate calculation of figures that they throw around, they don't realize that that's only due to the pre-assumption of rotation and centrifugal force. Right? None of that is, obviously, none of this, with the exception of the flat Earth measurement, has ever been actually measured, right? So they're going, what that will do is anything close to the equator, the latitudes close to the equator, is that will cause them to mutate, right? So that will, so if they were trying to do that today, whatever they come up with trying to match that would be wrong. Even because if they were using an actual sphere and they measured it correctly and then just added R, then it would probably be correct. But the fact that they're going to use an oblate spheroid means they can never be right. So their assumptions destroy their other assumptions, that leads them to their assumptions.
Poor Brian, because he didn't assume that was an error, but because he'd made other errors on his previous assumptions, those two errors have cancelled each other out to bring him within 1.6%.
Almost commendable for Adam. But no, that's an example of when you do have two false dichotomies, I can't think of a better term, cancelling each other out in stupid globe narratives. But then he, just to annoy me and make it complicated to summarise, threw in the widely varied yet comparable to an exactly 1.6% differential. That would have been so much easier to summarise if you didn't do that, Adam, and been a great example of how you can smush together two things, say they cancel each other out and therefore prove globe, but for the fact that we've got a massive variant in the bit that you strapped on the end. I don't know why you did that, but thanks anyway.
Net assumption 0.
Yeah, there you go. I knew there was a term for it, Chocolate. I'm glad you're here. Right. Net effect 0. Right. Like with gravity. We were not going to get into that now.
Later carried out by a man named Posidonius, who noticed that in Rhodes, which is an island in the Mediterranean located here, on a certain day there was a star that barely popped up over the horizon. But on the same day, back in Alexandria, the same star rose higher up over the horizon. And now you can play the same game as before and equate the change in angle to a
change in angle? No, what you've got isn't a change in angle. Why have you drawn out a flat baseline on the diagram underneath? Oh, they just love snatching their own wig off.
What did he say?
Hold on, go ahead, Adam.
You can play the same game and pretend that a change in angle means a change in, he's going to say, in curvature. The same game.
I heard that.
Yeah, a change in angle that you can measure with your eye against a flat baseline is actually the Earth twisting. And the curve is the outside edge of the protractor that you're twisting. That's the game they play here. That's all the globe Earth lie is. A juxtaposition from an angle you're measuring off a flat Earth to a protractor-based Earth turning with you on the curved edge of the outside of the protractor. Shout out to James Richards. According to the graven images they show us, Earth is a perfect sphere. It cannot be oblate. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate the support.
change in latitude, and all you got to do is measure the distance between the two cities. In this experiment,
you can't do that without a flat Earth either.
Posidonius also found the circumference of the Earth to be about 39,000 stadia.
The flat Earth angle derivation? Ugh.
But there's a problem here. I'm willing to believe that it was possible to accurately measure the distance from Siena to Alexandria by counting your steps. But
when you get that bodge builder and he says, look, I reckon it's possible to estimate the number of bricks for this house just by pacing it out. Don't worry about the bill.
But in this case, the distance you have to measure is over water. And I just don't see how this can be done if on land you're doing it by counting steps. What are you counting over water?
You already told us you're using a flat Earth concept with latitude. Right? Derivation of star towards horizon as you back away from it. That's been converted. Yeah? 1 degree for every 60 nautical miles. 1/10 of that. No, that's not right, is it? 1/10 of 60 at 1 degree would give you the stadia. Yeah, I got there in the end, Adam. You only told me today, ladies and gentlemen.
I tried to find information on how this distance was measured, but I couldn't find any. If any of you know how this was done,
let him know. Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. You had questions. We had answers. If you make a response, make sure you do the same. Share the algorithmic love that we don't get as we're flat earthers. Make sure he knows. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, because there's no way he's going to respond with the algorithmic love in tow if you don't let him know. Going by in the live chat. Let him know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Go ahead, Chocolate.
It's Adam.
It was
I didn't say anything.
Adam, go ahead.
I've waited to see if he was going to cover it in any way, but I don't think he is. And he's now talking about stars. Once you've developed the presupposition that angular change means Earth curve, you can then apply it to stars and be just as convinced, can't you?
Hold on, is this going to be Bad Moon Shadow?
Curvature.
Hold on. Is this going to be Bad Moon Shadow?
Yeah.
Oh, QE.
Bad Moon Shadow stretching across my path.
Perfect. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay. So at this point, we're not really looking, but we've made the jump that angular change can be the Earth. But if we go back to the original supposition and logic applied by Eratosthenes, his logic to make the differentiation, and he did say that it could either be a ball Earth with a big, faraway sun producing parallel rays, or a flat Earth with a close, local, small lumen ray. What we found with sundials is that they're just as applicable with the moon. Now, I'm not making a claim, I'm just pointing out the errors in their claim and their model. The first differential was it can be one or the other, big, far away on a ball, or close and local on a flat plane. Last time I checked in the heliocentric model, the moon was a lot smaller and a lot closer than the sun is. Because the moon can produce the same readings on a sundial, on a moon dial, it demonstrates that a body can be close and small, therefore destroying the first logic that Eratosthenes tries to do and use as the differentiator for what the shape of the surface is. Bad moon shadow.
Bad moon
Nice
shadow. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Adam and QE. Also, if you want to check that full episode out, Divergent Droid just posted a link to it. So, Bad Moon Shadow, episode 93. Was it 93? 94. So, yeah, there's a link going by in the live stream chat if you want to check that out. A full explanation is on a Ballbusters from about 3 months ago.
Or if you have any idea on how it could have been done around the year 100 BC, please let me know in the comments.
Hold on, I'll just get my crystal ball and resurrect some of the dead.
Hundreds of years later, the Caliph al-Mamun...
One second.
I'm thinking no, Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. So am I, Kiwi.
Go ahead, Brian,
Yeah,
seriously.
there's a very important point that's kind of missed with the bad moon shadow because, well, there's 2 points. No, I know Adam and that is not missing them, but I just feel they need to be put in. Number one, within that paradigm that they have mathematically created, the moon could be 93 or million miles away and 800 or whatever thousand miles in diameter, and the sun could be only 2,000 miles in diameter and be only 38,000 miles away or 238,000 miles away. So within that paradigm that they've created mathematically, the sun or the moon could be reversed, and they can't tell any different.
That's not true.
All of the assumptions.
That's not strictly true. Just that
No,
doesn't,
it is.
No, that doesn't jive with Kepler's assumptions of orbital mechanics. So no, you can alter the.
Finish.
Okay, go on.
You didn't let me finish. I know all about Kepler. Yeah, because they have to pre-assume everything is working because we're going around the sun, and the sun is a certain size, a certain distance, blah blah blah, right? But by pre-assuming that, they have to ignore that the moon could be that size and distance, and the sun be much the size and distance that the moon is within our model. Do you understand what I mean?
No, I do. Perfect. No. What you're saying is,
model.
yeah, perfect. You're saying based on their apparent behaviour, you can't decide which one's close or far or big or small. There is no difference. However, because of their application of Kepler, you were getting there. You were right. I was wrong to interrupt you.
No,
they have to assume it on their scale.
Well, the point I was trying to get to was the whole of their heliocentric universe starts and ends with the idea that the sun is really big and far away, and we are going around it. You could switch it around to make the moon that big and far away, and us be making some kind of a weird orbit of the moon or something at a different rate altogether. You could switch the whole model, the whole heliocentric model, around to a lunar model, and they couldn't argue the difference. That's the point. That's only point one. Point two is that people argue about shadows because that's what they wanted to argue about. Now, we've destroyed the argument with the bad moon shadow. But the point is that why are people arguing about shadows? So they can ignore the horizontal baseline they needed between Alexandria and Syene. Syene.
Finished. And Alexandria. Right, they need a flat baseline. Again, you got props earlier in the live show, because what they have to derive is a chord length if they're going to assert that, regardless of how sloppy it is with steps or stadia, flat Earth derived. Yeah, they're going to need a flat line for the distance. Well, what they're doing, they're going to use a chord through the globe when they haven't even decided it's a globe yet. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, but people are left arguing about the shadows and thinking the shadows, the shadow solves it. No, it doesn't. The shadow thing was a complete red herring to the whole thing, because there's no way they can claim a globe if they're just walking off the angle. So divert everyone's attention to shadows. Now, we did destroy the shadow thing, but it doesn't matter. Even if we didn't, it wouldn't make any difference. The point is that they diverted your attention away from how they measured it, the actual measurement, to how they decided to calculate it after the measurement. Just like when they take a measurement in celestial navigation, that's a horizontal distance across a horizontal plane of Earth. And then they decide to bring that to the center of their globe and make it an arc length, the distance you measured horizontally. So
To have repeated Eratosthenes' experiment by laying down rope in order to measure the
Stay with me. It's not an experiment.
an experiment.
distance that corresponded to 1 degree in latitude change.
You'll need a flat Earth for that.
This means he would have had to lay down rope over a flat expanse for a distance.
Right. So if it's not cord, it's got to be flat. If you're not dragging a cord through Earth, tunneling through it, it's got to be a flat expanse. Snatch your own wig off, university.
Distance of about 60 miles or 110 kilometers. So as we can see, Eratosthenes' method became the standard way of measuring the size of the Earth.
How did we get to see that? We got to see a few assumptions of begging the question that measurements we take in physical reality off flat planes actually transpose to a curved surface we couldn't get an angle from if you move it to the centre of said presupposed spherical Earth when you haven't even figured out what it is yet. And that the distance over a flat, straight line wouldn't correspond to your distance of S in this diagram. Because this distance over S would be a curved, increased circumferential distance versus the straight line that you just described. So this is riddled. It doesn't prove anything to do with Earth's sphericity. It shows you can just assume it, and you even disclaimed it.
Despite this problem of whether or not you could accurately measure the distance as the crow flies from one place to another.
No way! He actually keeps highlighting what we are one step ahead of him with. I mean, kudos that you can highlight the fact that this is a massive glaring error. Yeah. He's I don't know if you can see it on screen, Brian. He's highlighted what I just said, S, the distance, the curved distance, and he's described it as the crow flies, maybe to convolute it slightly. But ultimately, no, you've got a straight line requirement there, my friend. You need a flat Earth for this too. Nice that you can highlight it. Obviously, you're not going to say you need a flat Earth at the end of that. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, yeah, even with his idea there about a cord, using a cord of rope, right? The problem with that is that you have to, if you were even going to attempt such nonsense, right, the rope would have to be kept taut at all times. And every time you come to an elevation change, let's just say where something goes down into a valley and back up, or goes up into a hill and back down, you'd have to bring the rope basically through the center of that point. So if you were to do what is somewhat claimed that the Eratosthenes, whoever connected these hard pipe-hitting surveyors did, right? Then that would mean you'd have to you'd have to make sure that all elevation changes were nullified, which would also be drop. Drop would have to be nullified.
Yeah, you've got to make it. This is it. They've got to employ the flat Earth methodology to the point where they've got to force flatness. It was like, I can't remember who it was that Flatsoid had on his show, but he had a surveyor guy, obviously there to claim it's a globe, describing we ignore all elevation and whatever you want to call them, depressions. It's just the horizontal distance. That's all we focus on. It's all we do. It's just the horizontal. You're like, right. So no curve then, no drop, no Earth sphericity to account for then. They'll say it at you like they're proving how their method works on a sphere when they're literally describing how it must be flat.
Yeah, I find it cute that he keeps using the "as the crow flies," which, if you look it up, it literally means by the most direct or shortest route.
Straight line distance as the crow flies.
Yeah, straight line. It was Andrew Johnstone. That was the guy who Flatsoid had on. I trimmed out the clip where he's making it explicitly clear that they ignore any changes in elevation. Well, that, if you're a globe believer, is your Earth curve that would have to drop away from you at 8 inches per mile squared. There's the surveyor, globe-believing surveyor, telling you, no, just the horizontal distance.
That is, until a new method was...
Go
on.
That guy is not a surveyor. He just kind of promoted himself as... He didn't say he was a surveyor, but he kind of gave the impression, maybe, to some people that he's a surveyor. He's not. I have a funny story about him later on that happened yesterday. Go on.
Sorry, I misspoke. Bullshitter. Like a lot of them.
Devised by Al-Biruni, and this will be the subject of my next physics video.
Okay, I mean, I've got to give this guy a certain amount of kudos in respect to certain things at least being divulged to a certain extent, where anti-flat Earth propagandists wouldn't have. That have brushed over them completely. So while we can still moan and QE did, why is the rest of the assumptions? Yeah, we'll be pointing those out, but at least he admitted, well, we just beg the question of Earth's a sphere. Of course! That's how models are made! Let him know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. It's physics, just so I've said it verbally, Physics Almanac is the name of the channel. And I'm even going to give him a like, so drop him a comment. That's it. That's the end of that video. Just what I need is a little bit of dead air.
I agree.
I'm eating an egg sandwich. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Thanks, QE. No, I agree. I think he was honest, Nathan. I think that he actually pointed out the flaws in this thing people are told to believe. Like, how did he do that with footsteps or with ropes? Do you know what I mean? He pointed out these flaws. So to him, it's like, so if anyone knows that he actually did this, could you let me know? In other words, this is not turning out to be what I'm expecting. Well, it's like when people read into Cavendish's work, into his papers, and they find out that he never measured G or M. You know, this kind of thing. It's like, hang on a second. None of that happened. But he's supposed to be the poster child for G, but he never measured it. Eratosthenes is supposed to be the poster child for R, but he never measured it. You know what I mean? How did it, where did this measurement come from?
Yeah.
So,
go ahead, finish up, Brian.
No, that's the end. I don't have much.
It was rhetorical. Right. It came from a flat Earth. Go ahead, QE.
Yeah, I'm just taking a big picture after these two videos that you've shown, or three smaller videos that you've shown, and take a step back. And when I do that, this is just me, and I think Brian mentioned something about it actually yesterday, that taking Al Baruni and all the nonsense that we pointed out, all the contradictions, all the doublespeak, stories not lining up, Eratosthenes, all the assumptions that he didn't point out, you step back and you take a look at it and say, what the hell is going on here? And if it isn't obvious that these stories were made up post hoc, then I don't know what to tell you.
It was a time of war. It was a time of suffering. But with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, however, stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit me up on PayPal and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on an after show, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!